Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. James the Bhagavad Paramahansa, Parujikacharya, Ashtotter to the Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parujikacharya, Ashtotter to the Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. So we know Suresh is not coming? Because you know, you get him his pillow in case he shows up. Oh, a little late. Okay, we're beginning chapter 12 on page 509. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this first day of June 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are beginning chapter 12, Devotional Service, on page 509, text number 1. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satatayuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Payupasate Evam Satatayuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Payupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittama. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. Go ahead, Babu. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yogavittamaha. All right, I'll do the word by words. Arjuna Uvacha, Arjun said, Evam thus Satata, always, Yuktaha, engaged, yea, those who, Bhaktaha, devotees, Tvam, you, Payupasate, properly worship, yea, those who char also api, again, Akshadam, beyond the senses, of Yaktam, the unmanifested, Tesham, of them, Ke, who, Yoga Vittamaha, the most perfect in knowledge of yoga. Okay, give me 1 second here. I've cooled down a little bit. I need to put on my... Okay. I've had this thing since 1975. It's remarkably warm. It doesn't even show it. Translation. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Purport. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself, not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the Absolute Truth, Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the Absolute Truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body, he is a spiritual spark. And the Absolute Truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again, in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so factually there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and the personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this chapter is very concise. It's the shortest chapter. I think the chapter 15 is also 20 verses. But it's very, very important. Arjuna is asking a question that we should also ask. In one sense, we've already made, answered it to our, we're pretty sure that it's the personal. And this chapter very much encourages us to stay with that decision. What was I going to say? Prabhupada is, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find him contrasting the personalists and the impersonalists, the Mayavadis and the personalists. And we can see that even on the material plane, it's possible for a totally false narrative or conception to become prominent among people. And we know from the Bhagavad Gita that that's the basic problem in this material world. That the idea that we are the body, that we have only one life to live, that happiness lies through sense gratification, all of those are manifestly false. And yet, that strong conviction is there in so many people, and blocks them really from even allowing this knowledge to enter into their heart. It doesn't fit into any of their paradigms that they're living by, and so it becomes something that, one of the millions of things that they can't be bothered with, right? That they have to. So the fortunate soul is one who is open to these questions, to this knowledge. As Krishna says right in the second chapter, I was Astaryavat Pashyati Kashtadenam, that so many people hearing about the soul, seeing manifestations of the soul, they still find it inconceivable. Just the soul, what to speak of the Supreme Soul. So Arjuna is asking these questions for us, as he does throughout the Bhagavad Gita. We'll see that this whole thing with the universal form, he didn't really want to see it, but Prabhupada says at the beginning of the chapter that it's important that Krishna manifests his form, so that in the future, when anyone will claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you can always ask him, well, okay, please show us your universal form, and we'll believe you. And no one's going to be able to do it. So, but as we see at various points throughout this chapter, Arjuna, he wanted to see it, and then after a while he really didn't want to see it anymore. He says, please manifest your four-handed form, and finally the two-handed form. So this universal form is not something that devotees become too involved in. Although, in the second canto, we find a similar thing with the universal form, the first step in God realization, where it's the other kind of universal form, where you see the world as a manifestation of the if you will, the material body of the Lord, right? And in this way, you see the rivers as the veins, and you see the eye and the sun and the moon as the eyes, and you see the mountains as the bones, you see. And this is kind of a preliminary way in which you can begin to understand the all-pervasive nature of God and the magnificence of the power and the glory of God. The personality, that is a person behind everything. Not everything is just impersonal energy. But here now, that's behind us in the 11th chapter. Now it's the whole chapter is called Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna is going to answer this question in as explicit way as it's possible to answer. And then he's going to continue, and then the last part of the chapter is very important. It describes the qualities of a devotee, what we should strive for. So this chapter is very important for us. Okay, so let's go on.
I have a question.
Oh, I was glad you're there, because I'm going to answer part of your question from this morning. Go ahead, Vijay.
You want to ask
that whole
part?
Yeah, I listen online. I don't need to go explain exactly why, but I haven't been attending the class, but oftentimes I'm able to take breakfast at the same time as I listen. So I heard your question, and I have a little something to add that may help you answer the question. But go ahead and answer the question.
So please do. I'm all ears.
Okay. So you asked a question about how can we say padam padam yad vipadam natesham? Remember that? And,
yes.
And where it says there's danger at every step.
Yes.
But you were also saying, and which correctly, that for devotees, that whole song that he referred to, Bhajahore Manashi Nandanandana, Abhaya Charanara Vindade, that devotees, if they're serious, they hold on tightly to Krishna's lotus feet and you become fearless. So how is there fear at every step? And I think what's happening is you are conflating these two ideas of danger and fear. Fear is a response to danger, materialistic people, and anyone. If there's danger, suddenly you get afraid, because suddenly the body's in danger or whatever, your loved ones are in danger or whatever. So that's a response to danger. But one who's on the truly transcendental platform, and we see it, in the great devotees, that they don't show any fear even when death is threatening. We just heard the past time we had Nisringadev's appearance day, and Prahlad Maharaj didn't show any fear. He was being attacked by his father's henchmen, and finally by his father himself, right? But he was just completely absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and he felt completely protected. And so what's the point of fear, you see? So danger will come, but how we respond to it, that's according to our consciousness. Materialists are always terrified as soon as danger comes. And oftentimes, as was mentioned in the class this morning, that people internalize that fear, and you have anxiety even when there's no danger. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That you've been through such a harrowing experience, such a difficult experience in which you were terrified or horrified, whatever, that you take that with you. You can't forget. And therefore you have an ongoing fear. You have to take medication, so many different things. So that's why, back to my favorite verse about fear. Practically every class you can go to. When the 9 Yogendras begin answering the questions of Maharaj Nimi in the 11th canto, he asks a question, the classic question, what's the ultimate good? How can you attain it? And it's interesting that the first answer is all about overcoming fear. Because material life means a fearful situation. You can kid yourself or try to, forget the fearful situation through drugs or whatever, just sense gratification. But it always comes back because you're always within the material body, and the body is subject to destruction or danger or this and that. So that's what he deals with first. And he begins with the answer. It's not like he works up to it. He says, how's it go? Oh, I forget the Sanskrit now, but he's saying that one who is always meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna has attained fearlessness. And again, you have the Bhaja Huremana Abhaya Charanara Vindave. The English language is inadequate when we say fearless lotus feet. What we mean is that the feet give fearlessness to those who meditate on them. The feet themselves, of course, it's Krishna itself, but the English language doesn't quite work. But the verse that's so important, I mean, they're all important, and many. There's like 4 or 5 verses that are quoted all the time from this one section. I won't go into that all right now, but the verse that's always quotable is Bhayam Dvitiya Abhinaveshitak Syad. What's the source of fear? The source of fear is our turning away from Krishna, being absorbed in material energy, and then being covered completely by the material energy, so we completely forget Krishna, we forget our past lives, and we're constantly immersed in absorption in the asat. What is Prahlad's first answer, his father, when his father first starts questioning him? Prabhupada would always quote this verse. He says, Tat Saro Monye, because the father wanted to know, what is the best thing you learned today? He had no idea that he was a devotee at that point. He wanted to know, you learned this about Machiavellian dealings, so you become a nice demon like me. But Prahlad had none, wasn't going to have any of it. So he said, I'll give him what I learned from Narada Muni in the womb, So he says, Tat sadhu monye. Sadhu in this case means the best. I consider the best thing to learn. And Prabhupada makes a point of saying he didn't call him father, dear father. He called him the best of the demons, Asuravarya. Tat sadhu monye Asuravarya dehinam sadasamudvignadiyam asadgrahat. Hit patmapatam griyamandakupam vanam gatoyad haramashiyeta. So he's saying there that my dear father, my dear best of the demons, for the conditioned soul, dehinam, the living entity who's within the body, who is sadasamudvignadiyam, whose consciousness or intelligence is always disturbed. In other words, anxious, just about to become terrified, So always anxious. Why? A sadgrahat, because he's attached to, he's hanging on for dear life to the impermanent. I always give the example right by the ocean here. Suppose you're out on a ship somewhere, and suddenly it springs a leak. Oh my God, what to do? Oh, okay, we got these, what do they call them? We used to call them Jane Mansfields, or whatever. Life preservers. So you're at a life preserver. Oh, okay, I got a life preserver. So now you're floating along, and you'll be rescued, you hope. So you're scared, your heart's still beating, but there's, okay. But then there's a leak in the life preserver. Now, you're terrified. So that's a sadgrahat. A sat means that which is temporary. You're holding on to for dear life. What are you holding on to? Your body, everything related to it. This is what you're holding. But it's all slipping away by the force of time. There's no doubt about it. So it's an existential, ontological position of anxiety and fear. So therefore, some udvigna. Udvigna means disturbed. Some udvigna means very disturbed. So what should you do? He said, give it all up. He's telling his father, his big, powerful father who conquered the universe. He's just a delicate 5-year-old boy, He looks delicate. He says, hit vatmapatam griyamandakupam. Give it up. This materialistic family life, which is a blind well. Griyamandakupam. And what else? Okay, I'm giving it up. What should I do? Vanam gato. Go to the forest, namely Vrindavan, and Haramashri. Take shelter of Hari. The last thing that Hiranyakasipu wanted to hear. So, from the beginning, he's talking about how to overcome fear. So the idea is that there's always danger in this world. But for devotees, if they're securely on the lotus feet of Krishna, that place of danger is not for them. Even while in this realm, they don't feel the danger and the terror and the horror that's happening for people in the materialistic life. That's what that verse is about, which is samashrita ye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punya shomarari. He says, samashrita, one who takes full shelter of the boat of the lotus feet. Plava is boat, padapallava is lotus, padapallava plavam. It's a very poetic verse. Which are mahatpadam, the place where all the Mahatmas dwell. It has another meaning, the acharyas say, where the whole Mahatattva rests, the whole existence is resting on Krishna's lotus feet. Punya yasha, this is another name for Krishna. Just by glorifying him, you get pious credit. You become pious. Murari, Krishna, the enemy of the Mura demon. Okay, so what is their fate? What happens to them? So they're on this boat, secure boat of Krishna's lotus feet, but then all of a sudden they don't need the boat anymore because the whole ocean of danger of material world shrinks down to the little puddle in a calf's hoof print, and you can walk over it. Bhavambudir vatsapadam parampadam, because they go to the supreme abode, parampadam. Padam padam yad vibadam, this place where there's danger at every step, vibadam, padam, this place is not for them. So even though they may physically be here, their consciousness is fixed on Krishna, and so they're not feeling the pain and the suffering and so forth. So that's the answer, Prabhu, is that danger is going to be here at every step. But fear is an individual thing. That's possible to overcome by those who take shelter of Krishna and are fully absorbed in his service, even at the point of death. And we saw that practically. Recently, one of our dearest devotees is Shamali, who's Parashakti's and Yamunapati's daughter, passed away. She had cancer, in Gainesville. But many devotees were calling her. I called a few times, gave her some shlokas and poems and things. But Yamunapati really explained when they had the ceremony for here, I think I was out of town, that she was very peaceful at the time. She was fully absorbed. She had been, her spiritual master, Indradyumna Maharaj, had spent hours with her on the phone, and she had so many friends and chanting Hare Krishna and everything. And he said it was just like, she exhaled and was gone, and they took her back to Vaikuntha. No terror, no screaming, no, I used to work in a hospital, so much medication you have to give people because they're freaking out, at the time of death. So it's possible even for us to do that, and it's a different kind of consciousness. So that's the answer. There's danger at every step. We're in the material world, but fear is not there if you're in Krishna conscious. That's the idea. Now, what was your other question?
Thank you, Prabhu, for your wonderful answer to my question related to this morning. And my question related to the verse you just recited is as follows. Here in the purport, I find Srila Prabhupada advising us in order for us to go for the personalistic way, devotional service to Lord Krishna, and forget about the worshipping of the impersonal feature of Lord Krishna. But my question is as follows. You know better than me that God, he has this specific characteristic that he is omnipresent. The whole time, everywhere, the Lord is present, and also he is everything that is. So if God is omnipresent, and because of being omnipresent, he is the whole time everywhere, and adding to this, we have that God is also everything that exists. Why is it that we need to choose for the worship of his
personal form?
Yes, personal form. Why should we choose for devotional service to his personal form?
Because the whole idea, the whole meaning of bhakti yoga, as I mentioned last class, is reciprocation. It's not just one-way worship, The idea is that you by taking up the path of bhakti, you're going to experience Krishna's reciprocation, you see? And you can't love the impersonal form. You can't even love the universal form, Krishna's original form is that ravishing, two-handed human-like form, and all of the idea of bhakti yoga, and it's our only hope really, is to reawaken our original relationship with him by the processes of devotional service has been mapped out and been run by all of our followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Mahaprabhu himself and all of his parampara. We're too fallen in this age. The thing is, there's a certain that phrase from the Bible. I don't know much about the Bible, but there's one phrase that says, "And the last shall be first, and the first shall be last." So what you get from that is that the first, the people who have money and influence and so forth, they're not going to get the mercy of Jesus, because they're too proud, they're too demonic. But those who are humble, those who are downtrodden, those who feel no shelter other than to call out desperately for the mercy of the Lord, they're going to be exalted. They're actually going to go back to Godhead, and those who were so proud, they're going to get cut down eventually, and who knows what's going to happen. They're going to have to stay within the rotation of samsara. So that's very good, because we read about in the Bhagavatam at the beginning of the Bhagavad, the 10th chapter, in the 10th verse in the first canto, of the first chapter, how disqualified everyone is in Kali Yuga. Prayana Bhayashaksabe Kalabasman Yugedina Manda Samanda Madayo Manda Bhagya Yupadata. For the most part, that was in Prabhupada's translation, they took it out, I put it back in. It's back in. For the most part, people in this age are short-lived. That's how you pronounce it, by the way. They don't live very long, certainly compared to previous ages of people on the heavenly planets. They're lazy in the matter of spiritual life. If they're at all interested, they're misguided by so many cheaters and bogus yogis. And above all, they're always disturbed. They're unfortunate and always disturbed. So what chance do we have? We have the great chance that Krishna, in the form of Lord Chaitanya, saw all this and said, well, these people, there's no way they're going to, study the Vedas and practice yoga. I mean, already 5,000 years ago, Arjuna rejected the yoga process, strict yoga alone and everything, So I'm going to give them a process. Anyone can take it up, which is a very important thing, because all of us basically are outcasts in terms of the Veda culture. The strict upbringing and all the training. Nobody has that. So we need something that's going to cut through everything and allow us to become purified easily with that one quality of sincerity and surrender. So that's Trinadapisuni Chena Toradapisahishnuna. To be more humble than the blade of grass, as tolerant as a tree, to think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant His name incessantly until the final hour. So if you're actually feeling that way, you'll feel, I got to call out to Krishna at every moment, because I'll just get run over here. That's our qualification. So we need that personal form. Have you ever tried meditating on the Brahma Jyoti? It's not easy. It's very difficult. When I first started meditating, you had to pick your mantra. So what should I pick? Om. What else am I going to say? Om, 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 Om. It's very, very hard. I couldn't do it for more than 10 minutes, So then I found this. It wasn't the Hare Krishnas. Anyway, it's a whole story, but there was this wonderful little booklet written about some group that had been practicing supposedly non-stop kirtan for 25 years in South Africa. And they got a whole bunch of the Indian scholars and people, I guess some bhaktas, to write essays. I forget about it. And I read it, and I said, oh, this is my mantra. And I started chanting. And as soon as I started chanting that, I became more interested in finding out about the Hare Krishnas, because Krishna is breathing me. And Krishna sent a devotee, not a Krishna bhakta so much as a Ram bhakta, but he was really into Krishna also to some degree, to invite me to come to the temple. Hey, why don't we go to the temple in Brooklyn? I said, okay. I had a car. Good. And it's a long story. But the TLC is what really got me, because I was very philosophically inclined, and there's a lot of philosophy in there. More than the Krishna book, which is too much Leela for me right away. It was too personal. I had to kind of move into that. But the point is that you'll find within our literature, Shukadeva Goswami, the Kumaras, several very, very staunch impersonalists that Lord Chaitanya preached to, Prakashananda Saraswati, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who gave up the impersonal thing for Krishna Bhakti and never went back. And they would even, Sarvabhauma, he wrote so many wonderful verses. I was just like a dried up oil cake, that all the oil had been pressed out of. And then Lord Chaitanya came and made me into, a dancing devotee. So, what is the nature of the soul? That's the thing. We're not. Our nature isn't just to float along in the Brahma Jyoti without any senses, without any thoughts, without anything. That's not natural. That's not what Krishna is. The The Brahma Jyoti is, his effulgence of his body, but it's not his whole being. It's artificial. And the basis of the Mayavad of that is envy of Krishna and fear. There's a wonderful purport, I'll call your attention to it, in the 4th chapter, text 10, where this Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, Manmaya Mamapashrita, Krishna is saying. This phrase comes up several times in the Gita. Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. Those who have given up attachment, fear, and anger, Manmaya Mamapashrita, who have taken shelter of me, Bhavo Jnana Tapasa, through cultivation of knowledge and attachment, they become purified and attain love for me. And in that purport, Prabhupada explains the 3 different classes of people who don't come to Krishna. And the first one is the materialist, naturally. Too much raga, too much attachment with material things, and they don't even become interested. They're too busy, it doesn't. But then you have the bhaya, and the bhaya is the impersonalists. They're afraid of being persons again, because person means the body, and body means suffering. It's the famous throwing out the baby with the bathwater. In other words, the conception of a spiritual body, an eternal body, and pleasure which is not material, but is not all just the pleasure of not taking birth and not dying. That's a negative thing. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, he's a person, we're also persons. It's unnatural to negate our personhood, whether through Mayavad or through Buddhism or whatever. And to try to just for the sake of liberation, to give up any thoughts and any relationships and anything. And that's why they always fall down. Prabhupada would say, Yen yeda bindaksha vimuktamaninas trayashta bhavada vishuddha buddhiya. This is a verse uttered by the demigods when Krishna's in the womb. Shiva and Brahma, they came secretly, And what it means is that besides your bhaktas, there are others, O lotus-naveled Lord, vimuktamaninas, who can think that they're liberated, but their intelligence is really impure, avishuddha buddhiya. Because a few, not everyone, but a few of them, after severe austerities, they're able to temporarily go up to the Brahman platform. But because they neglect service to your lotus feet, they eventually fall down again, because it's an unnatural position. And they start hospitals or do this or whatever. So, even though Krishna is all-pervading, the devotees understand that, but that's just part of Krishna's glory. That's not what we concentrate on. That's something we need to know. We need to know that through the Bhagavad Gita, because we're coming from a point of neglecting Krishna. So our original attitude should be one of worship and gratitude and service and study and understand all of this ontology, this tattva of Krishna. But at the same time, by chanting this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna means all attractive, and through service we're developing and purifying the heart and gradually regaining our understanding of our intimate personal relationship with Krishna. So there's no mukti without bhakti. We learn that from Rishabdev. He says, Pritir nayavan maya vasudeve namuchate dehi yogena tavad. Very explicit. Until you have love for me, Rishabdev is saying, I'm Vasudev. He's the incarnation. Until one develops love for me, there's no question of liberation from bondage to a body, to a material body. Because it doesn't take you all the way, you're not completely purified. You're still envious of Krishna. You still want to be the absolute, But devotees, we don't go in that direction, and Lord Chaitanya says you study that philosophy and then you get destroyed. Mayavadi bhasha sunli sarvanash. So that's part of the answer. I want to go on with this chapter, Prabhu, but we can discuss that.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. All right, let's
Hare
go on.
Krishna, Prabhu. Can I ask
Dhanabari.
a question?
Haribol.
Thank you, Haribol. So you Prabhu mentioned that we shouldn't think that we don't want to come back in this material world. Please, when we are chanting that kind of mood, we should never have that. I don't want to come back. It's really hard in this material world in Kali Yuga. So should we think like that?
Well, here's the thing: is that your consciousness evolves in Krishna, on the path of bhakti. And I've said this many times before. I mean, why would Krishna say, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshanam? You've heard that phrase before, right, Danabai?
Yes.
Part of knowledge is to always see and keep in mind the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. So in other words, he's encouraging us to want to not come back again. And so many places he says, yeah, and they come to me. They come to me. They don't have to suffer in the material world. So that motivation is healthy, especially at the beginning. There's two things going on. What motivates us to practice devotional service? Well, there's two motivations, especially at the beginning. There's one is a healthy fear of the material world, and that keeps us going. Understanding that the petty sense gratifications of this world are what binds us to this world. Always this idea of the knots in the heart, right? Vidya Granti. So many verses you find in the Bhagavad Gita talking about how you can cut those knots. Yadanudhyasina yukta karma granti nabandhanam chindandi govidastasya kona kuya kataratim. The second chapter of the first canto. The sword of remembrance. Yadanudhyasina yukta karma granti, but you can cut these knots of karma, which they work like that with the desires, the karma. Chindandi kovidastasya. Who a wise person would not be attracted to what? To hearing and chanting about Krishna, which develops that sword of remembrance. You see, but as you progress, and if you're doing it right, you're becoming more and more attracted to serve Krishna, to hear about Krishna's glories, to become attracted to Krishna personally, and you come to the point eventually where Lord Chaitanya says, "Nadanang nadanang nasundarim." Kavitang vajagadishika mama janmani janmani shure bhavata bhaktara hoitiki. So this is an advanced prayer, but it's something we should know. I don't want wealth, I don't want followers and a nice spouse, and all this stuff. And I don't even want liberation. All I want is your unmotivated devotional service, birth after birth. Knowing, or not knowing, that includes liberation. Even if you take birth, if you're in that mood, you're not feeling the impingement of the material energy. It becomes a paraphernalia for serving Krishna. So yes, we should be serious and understand the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. Krishna recommends it, and we want to avoid that. Therefore, we should chant very sincerely. But as you chant sincerely, you'll find that your absorption in that is going away. And your real eagerness to try to experience Krishna in all of his, sweetness, is what motivates you most of all. And mukti is byproduct. That famous verse for Bilba Mangal Thakur, we should all know this verse. Bhakti strayishcha datada bhagavan hyadisyad daive nanak padati divmikishora murti mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman Dharmata kama gatayak samayak patiksha. Anyone ring a bell? So this is Bilba Mangala. Near the end of his Karnamrita, he said, "My dear Lord, if someone is situated very firmly in your devotional service," he says, "Bhaktis tvayi stiratada," means that unbroken devotional service. Stiratada Bhagavan, O Lord. Yadi syad. If someone has that, then here's what happens. Bhakti sri sada bhagavan yadi sad daive nanak palati divvikishora murti. Then you get a vision. You get, experience of your divine adolescent form. You see you can relate to, And as far as Mukti is concerned, she's waiting by the door with the Anjali. This is Anjali, like Pushpanjali. This is the service mudra. You know, I went through this whole thing. When I was working on the Bhagavatam, we had to figure out. Later, I maybe anyway, it's not a mistake, but the idea of folded hands. You know, this is folded hands, like you have, right? But this is not. We don't usually use this, right? This is a Christian thing, right? You're praying. You're not offering anything. You're praying, oh Lord, please, give me this. But devotees, they're offering pushpanjali. There's a pushpa in there. You're making an offering. So the mukti is saying, okay, I'm offering herself. In other words, it becomes naturally. If you're fixed in devotion, then mukti is waiting to serve you. And as far as whatever you need in of dharma, artha, and kama is also there. We need a little kama, a little prasadam, a big feast, that's also provided. So the idea is that it comes as a byproduct. We don't have to obsess about it. But in the beginning, we have these two motivations. One is that, we're afraid of taking birth again. The other is Krishna's attraction. Now, even, mixed with Krishna's attraction is the relation with the spiritual master. If you can remember the songs we sing, Shri Guru Charanarata Ese Utama Gati, that the best means of advancement is attraction for the Guru's lotus feet. And that's how this movement grew. Prabhupada was so attractive because he was reflecting Krishna, and he was loving people, the devotees in 26th Avenue, that they gave up their lives, their careers, to serve him, And of course, they were experiencing from the chanting so much, the kirtan and everything. So that became, the primary motivation. But as well, these other things should keep us going. Krishna's attractiveness and are serious about, let's get out of this material world. So don't worry if that thought comes to your mind that I'd like to get out of it. That should encourage you to chant with more sincerity and really squeeze those beads and pray. Please reveal to like that.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Very
Text
nice.
2.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
We're going to do at least 2 verses. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Maya Veshamano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parihupetas Te Me Yukta Tamamataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Purport. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam, or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. So, okay, that's the answer. That's the end of the chapter now. I mean, right? He goes on. But this chapter is full of these, conclusive verses. Aveshamanaya nitya yukta upasade. Shraddhaya, the faith has to be there. That the faith sustains you. And yukta tamamata, this phrase came up at the end of the 6th chapter. Who's the greatest yogi, right? Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhatati yomam se me yukta te me yukta tamamata. Yukta tamam means one who's most linked to me in yoga. But notice he mentions faith there again. That faith is so important. Faith is there when you really can't. I mean, faith moves the world. If the 17th chapter, different varieties of faith. I like to give you the example. You're walking down the street, and you come to the light. and suddenly it changes. A walk, green. So if you see that, you have full faith that this other side is red now, right? It's not going to be green in that car barreling down there. That's just to keep going through and just knock me down. So you have faith, The earth itself, we have to talk about that here because this is earthquake country, I mean, anyone, implicit faith, and you take your step, it's not going to dissolve under you, and you're going to, be swallowed up. That's why it's so terrifying when an earthquake comes, because the very thing that's like the foundation of your whole life is suddenly shaken. But we move on. We don't even realize it. But this, the world moves on faith. Unfortunately, it's all material modes of nature faith. So having that faith in Krishna, because we can't see him directly, that's the thing. It's beyond our ability to see or to know with the material senses. So therefore, we need the intermediaries, the pure devotees who have seen. You might always say tattvadarshi. Again, you'll see that they've seen and they can tell you, yes, it's real. Krishna exists. Now follow me and just do what I say. And so that person who is able to impart faith, that's the acharya, And so, Prabhupada gave us this. He was definitely on that platform. And so what he's doing is he's vouching for the truth of Krishna's words. That's why Prabhupada is so eager, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, not to obscure Krishna's words and distort them for some material purpose. So that's the great treasure that we have here. So what Krishna is saying, with great and transcendental faith, those are considered to be the best. So the answer is there. But then, Krishna goes on, because not everyone is on that platform can immediately fix Krishna in his mind, have the great faith. So he'll give so much encouragement to those of us who are struggling along, But even if you can't be a devotee, at least don't be selfish, egotistical, give charity. There's a verse like that. It reminds me of this one, I think Sariputta tells the story how he came. He always was a tremendous brain, a scientist. I think he was living in northern New York State. He was going to school up there. And and he was just absorbed in science. And I'll tell you, mathematicians can get into a whole different space, And he told us how he would see a tree, but he wouldn't see the tree. He would see the molecules working and, the equations, So anyway, but then there was a flood. And he was called upon, everyone come and, put the sandbags down and everything. And so he was doing selfless work. It kind of changed him a little bit, And so then he's wandering around in the bookstore and he sees a Bhagavad Gita, he gets the Bhagavad Gita. He hadn't been open to it, it kind of changes you. And so he read that, became interested, came down to New York, and the rest is history, he joined up. But, so Krishna is saying that because that keeps the heart open so that you can take advantage when you meet a devotee, when you come in contact with devotional service. So here, the answer is as clear as it could possibly be, that fixing the mind on Krishna, always remain worshipping him with faith, those are the best. But we'll read tomorrow about those who aren't on that platform. All right, we have time.
I have a question.
We're going to have to hold it for tomorrow. Because I want
okay, no problem.
But because I want to give one little shloka first. Very
Of course, no problem.
Okay. Thank you. So you haven't heard this one in a while. Radheti nama navasundara sita mugdam. Okay. This is about the holy name, Raghunath Das Goswami. Radheti nama navasundara sita mugdam. Krishneti nama madhurapatagara dugdham. Savakshanam suraviraga himena ramyam kritvata daiva pibame rasanechadharte. An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes. Such is the name of Radha, by whom all three worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet. Such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the fragrant, cooling spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then at every moment drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.